Before we get started, a quick disclaimer. Neither the host nor the guest of today's episode are medical professionals. Nothing in this episode is medical advice, nor should it replace any medical treatments. Should you have any questions, or should you be malfunctioning in some fashion, please seek advice from your trusted medical professional. Thank you, and let's enjoy the show together. Welcome to Power Forward and Lead, the podcast dedicated to inspiring you to become the best leader you can be. With innovative leadership strategies, practical tips on personal and professional growth, and fresh perspectives on learning and development. With your host, Fatima Zaidi, we explore the stories and insights of extraordinary leaders, learning from their journey to help you on yours. So let's power forward, lead with confidence, and unlock your full potential. And if you find today's topic meaningful, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. All right, well, thank you, Corey, for joining us here at Power Forward and Lead podcast, where we discuss leadership, learning, and growth strategies. Corey is originally from California.
That's right.
And he's a serial entrepreneur and a local one as well, with being the owner of Luna Float and Wellness. The wellness part is a new addition, correct?
It is, yes. Yeah. We've just trying to expand upon the original purpose of the business and broaden it, right? With the float center just being very straight line. There's not much left to imagination there, so it's just a float center. So when we came in, there were more services available to customers, but we wanted to really expand on that. Really pivot the whole business model away from just being the float center, which really was geared towards, I should say, mental, physical recovery, but leaning more to the mental side. People are looking for peace of mind, ways to work through problems. Deprivation therapy's been around for a long time, and that was really the purpose of flotation. And I think the original owner had really kind of geared her clientele towards that. So yes, we modified the name, and funny enough, is still under consideration for future modifications. But the idea was to really broaden the appeal to the more greater public. And we live in an outdoor playground out here in the valley, and we really want to capture a lot of that physical recovery side. People are so active, enjoying outdoor activities, sports. We have a broad range of sports teams out here in the valley as well. So we really wanted to pivot and offer more of that physical recovery, physical wellness, and still cater towards the mental rest, relaxation. I mean, we all need it. Yeah. With the stimulation of having one of these in your pocket at all times.
Yes,
and,
yeah.
We live in an age of connectivity.
We do. And then I know, I want to come back to the component of the target audience and who you're attracting.
Yeah.
But it's so true. I find that when I go floating, just having an hour and a half of absolute, disconnection from my phone, turning off my phone, not worrying about it, I feel like I get so much more of a rest.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about this other day when I was younger, and I remember the smartphones weren't there yet. We were still at flip phones. I'm still a millennial, so we had phones pretty early in my time, but I think smartphones came out more when I was in later high school or mid-high school.
Yeah.
And essentially, I remember people didn't take their phones to their bathrooms. And some of the greatest ideas people would have would be in the bathroom or in the shower.
Shower thoughts.
Yeah. And now I feel like it's lost because we're taking our phones in there.
Yeah.
And then with the flow therapy, I actually do want to circle back to, I have heard you say this before, that when Luna Float's focus was a little bit more towards mental health, it drew in a different type of audience than you're trying to attract right now. Can you elaborate on that and tell us more about that?
Yeah, so we don't want to detract from that audience completely, right? Because there's a huge need for it. I like to consider flotation tanks are kind of like self-therapists, right? Like you said, it's a time for you to go in quietly, without any distraction, just you and your thoughts. And I've heard a lot of people tell me that they have a difficult time shutting down their brains. They're very active thinkers, whether they're suffering from ADHD or any sort of over hyper brain activity type of ailments. But the way I see it is, if you go to see a therapist, the idea is to sit down and bring those thoughts to the surface, to air out your laundry, so to speak, get it out there, speak about it, go through the emotions, go through the feelings. It's therapeutic for the body to release these thoughts. We all know that if we hold that stuff in and we put it deep down, it doesn't always come out so well, and it can cause a lot of issues, for yourself. So when you're in those tanks, like you said, and you have that peace of mind, it's almost like you should just allow your brain to go through those motions, allow those thoughts, go through it, experience it, because you're going to come out with the clarity of releasing that emotion instead of just holding it inside. So in that aspect, yes, I do believe it's kind of like your own therapy in a way. So there is very much a need for it, but there is also a huge physical attribute where the flotation tank gives you that magnesium absorption, which is a huge deficiency in most adults. The last study I read rated that just about 80% of people are magnesium deficient in their daily diets. And we know that you walk into the grocery store, every aisle down the center is usually processed food, right? It's all fake. It's all manufactured. Whereas when you focus on the outer edges of the grocery store, you have your produce, you have your meats, you have your breads, your bakeries items, food that's made from real food, right? So I think getting that magnesium absorption in your body is very beneficial. The best aspect of it, though, for the physical recovery side, is the zero gravity, right? And you've experienced it. Floating effortlessly in 1,200 pounds of pharmaceutical grade Epsom salt is so beneficial because you're actually lying there, your skeletal system can relax, your muscles can release tension. One study I read noted that the brainstem function, because your brainstem is the most active part of your body, constantly sending signals from every aspect of touch, smell, every sense goes through your brainstem. So when you're in those flotation tanks and your body is not feeling any pressure points, it actually gives that time to relax and kind of shut down. So yes, the mental side is very important, but there's also a huge physical benefit. I have a lot of clients that suffer from physical pain, whether it's from injury, surgery, or just body wear and tear over the years. And flotation is one of the things that can bring a lot of people a lot of relief.
I actually was in a car accident several years ago.
Okay.
And from that, I've had a back injury for quite a while. And I was on all kinds of pain medications, including things like T3s and naproxens. And I think I probably took them, I don't know, I think I gave up on those pain meds like within a couple months because they weren't doing anything for the pain, but they were upsetting my stomach. They were giving me migraines. They were just, and I was still in severe pain after taking them. So I was putting myself through torture. And it was funny to me because what really helped me in my recovery was two things. One of them, a big part of it was flow therapy. The other part of it was neuroprolotherapy or trigger point injections through my naturopath, both of which insurance doesn't cover. Right? Ironically. And so I got to a point where I didn't care if they didn't cover it. I knew what was working for me. And my doctor was on board with that if that was working for me. So we just went with that. But flow therapy, for me personally, I felt like I would go in with really severe back pain, and I would come back out feeling like I just bought myself a brand new back.
Good.
And the other thing was, I used to have one of those inversion tables.
Yes.
You hang upside down to
I've
release
seen
pressure
those.
from the spine. I found that floating has had a similar impact,
Okay.
taking pressure off the spine.
Definitely.
And then, same thing, the magnesium deficiency, and all that. It's, and the mental focus that comes right after.
Oh, very much.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say, for anyone who has never done flow therapy, I feel like we should backtrack a little bit. If you wouldn't mind going over exactly what it is.
Sure. And also, actually, real quick, I just wanted to mention, because you made such a good point, you were being pushed pain medications for your injuries. And that is very much a Western medicine ideal, and it's something that I think needs to change drastically. I've done some research lately because I've had a lot of clients asking me, hey, can I claim this on my medical benefits? And we are starting to see a bit of an evolution from the medical system, where a lot of health spending accounts are now starting to cover wellness aspects, wellness treatments for people. We're starting to see now that medical plans are even covering gym memberships for clients, where businesses are now paying for this to get their employees on a better plane, a little bit happier that way. So we are starting to see that. But I think what's happening is we are seeing a bit of a blend of that Eastern medicine and Western medicine, because doctors nowadays, they just want to prescribe pills, right? They don't think about, hey, let's take this patient and let's start from the root of the issue. Let's get people healthier. Let's keep people more active, more in shape, better diets, more educated, essentially. We're being brainwashed by television saying, hey, eat this, it looks great. Sure, it looks great, but it's not great for you. So yes, but we'll go back to float therapy and and what makes it so beneficial. So about 6 months ago, I listened to a podcast, and a gentleman was being interviewed talking about float therapy, and it resonated well with me because we can summarize float therapy in what we call the 3 pillars, okay, which is basically sensory deprivation, magnesium absorption, and the zero gravity effect. Okay, so those 3 aspects really are what make up the core of float therapy and why it is so beneficial. Number 1 being the sensory deprivation. This was written about and studied by John C. Lilly, who has several books on flotation therapy out there. We have a few in our center for customers to come in and read if they're so interested. But lots of great information on the study of float therapy and how it kind of came about to a wellness journey for people to just come into a center and experience it, where it was very much kind of originally just clinical study. But the sensory deprivation side is what we touched on earlier, where you can kind of shut out that outside world, allow your brain time to rest. I see it with my own children nowadays, where I feel like some days they can't go 5 minutes without a device in their hand or sitting in front of a screen. My youngest and my oldest, at sometimes I feel like I have to get them out of the house to go do activities just to get them off of their devices and give their brains some time to just rest and relax. So being in a flotation tank is a great way for adults, even kids, teenagers, to come inside, put their stuff down and simply shut it all off. 90 minutes could be extremely therapeutic. The second aspect, yes, is like we discussed earlier, the magnesium absorption. We're so deficient, and the beautiful thing about flotation therapy, now keep in mind, as a wellness center, we're in a $4 billion industry, and whereas treatment-based wellness is really only 30% of that industry, the other 70% is all supplements, right? The supplement industry in the wellness space is what makes up 70% of it. So we're competing against Jameson Pharmaceuticals offering you a magnesium pill that you can simply wake up every morning, put it in your system. It's just a very inefficient way to get your magnesium, because magnesium is one of those minerals where if you take too much, it can upset your system. Your bowels, your stomach can become very upset. So we don't know how deficient we are. We don't know the levels we need. So the beautiful thing about flotation therapy is your body has a very special feature where the magnesium, as you're floating in the tank, is being absorbed by your hair follicles. But your body's unique feature is that it knows when to shut off absorption. So once your body reaches that peak where it says, oh, I've now got enough, your hair follicles will stop the absorption. You don't get that anywhere else. So that is a very unique feature of float therapy. Then we have obviously the third aspect, which is the zero gravity effect. Some people liken it to floating in space. I've had customers refer to it as being back in the womb. Because the tank's water temperature is right at body temperature. You know, they run between 94.5, 96 degrees, depending on the day. And you don't know where your body ends and the water begins. It's all one temperature. So you feel very much one with the tank. You're floating in complete darkness, which is the preferred way. You obviously know you can't have lights in the tank. Some people need that ambient lighting to get comfortable. But that zero gravity, that weightlessness feeling, like we said, is just so extremely therapeutic for the entire body. Physically, I believe that athletes should really be doing this before and after really strenuous activity. I think it would benefit. We do have float centers, part of the collective group that I'm a part of, that we all kind of follow each other. There's a lot of marathon runners that like to use this as their, pre-marathon piece to get their head in the right place to compete on a high level. And then again, they like to come in afterwards to aid in that recovery.
Yeah, no, that was actually going to be one of my questions, which is the difference between absorbing magnesium through your skin and taking a pill, and what the difference is. So thank you for covering that. Also, while we're at it, can you mention all the other services and some of their benefits that you offer?
Yeah, so the center, when we purchased it and got into the business, we have an infrared sauna. So with infrared saunas, very therapeutic in many ways. You have a nice dry heat, which differs from your standard steam sauna, your steam room, because of the way it generates the heat. So you'll notice, if you've ever been into the rec centers, you go into the steam saunas, the air is very thick. It's very heavy. So it can be very difficult to breathe. It makes you feel very congested. It's hard to stay in for long periods of time. You will start sweating immediately, but you're not getting that deep penetrating effect that the muscles really need. So with an infrared sauna, the ceramic panels are actually emitting infrared waves. And depending on the level of sauna you have, there's mid, far, and near infrared. They produce a very dry heat, and those infrared waves can actually penetrate right down to that muscle tissue level. So you're going to find the air is so dry you can breathe very clean, very easily, and you're getting a much deeper penetrating effect from the sauna. So you're going to get cleansing from the pores, because your pores can then open up and release toxins. You're getting the penetrating relief to the muscle tissue, which can then again, when your body is very hot, your capillaries can expand, your blood pressure should lower, and everything should pump through your body much easier. So it's very therapeutic to give your muscles that rest. And then one important factor of any sauna session is the time after the sauna, where you want to let your body warm up or cool down naturally. That will help your metabolism. It helps everything just kind of settle in. It's almost like that absorption period you need after your session. Makes it even more therapeutic, and hydration, obviously. So their sauna is a very popular feature. The next thing we have is our red light therapy. So after we took over, that was one of the services we decided to expand to. Red light therapy is very beneficial for some of the similar reasons that sauna sessions are. So the red light system that we installed into our business is one of the top red light towers on the market. They are essentially medical grade LED lighting. So our tower runs a far and near infrared light. Again, light therapy, this is an interesting thing. It was discovered by NASA. Astronauts were actually up in space working on a horticulture project, trying to grow plants in zero gravity using red light. And they actually found that the cuts and scratches on their hands were healing really quickly because they were exposing themselves to so much of this red light. Then they brought their findings back, and then NASA kind of headed this research, and then it just became common knowledge, and now we see it all through the wellness space. So with the red light, similar to the sauna, it's going to penetrate right down to that muscular level. It's going to relieve that tension. It's also actually regenerating skin cells. It promotes collagen production and will allow, with repeated use, a more restful sleep as well. So lots of good aspects. We have a membership that we offer called our Vitality membership, and it allows customers to use our sauna, our red light tower, and our halo therapy chamber, which I'll touch on in just a second here. What we are trying to promote with people is to ditch the expensive face creams, the serums. I've seen, a bottle of face cream is costing people close to $200 and up for a little cream that claims to have a pharmaceutical ingredient that will make you look younger, shrink wrinkles, tighten your skin. And it probably works, but there has to be repeated use. So where we're trying to educate people is, let's use wellness treatments, let's use proven scientific research treatments to ditch those. Open your pores with the sauna, sweat out the toxins, allow your skin to expand and contract. Use the red light for skin regeneration, for cell regeneration, to shrink wrinkles, to promote collagen production. And then we have our halo therapy chamber, which is far unutilized. We need to get more people using this. So halo therapy is essentially dry salt therapy. It goes back thousands of years where they used to bring, they noticed the salt miners that used to mine in the salt caves were always very healthy. They never suffered from respiratory issues. They were never calling in sick. They had very nice skin, considering they were miners, being underground all day. But this, again, was discovered just randomly, and they started bringing people down into these salt caves for treatments, and they started to realize the effect of salt inhalation into the system. Salt is a antiviral and antimicrobial substance, so it does our bodies a lot of good. I mean, salt as we know it that we put on our food is a little bit different. Himalayan salt, table salt, kosher salt, those affect our body completely differently. But with a inhalation of a pharmaceutical grade Himalayan salt, you're actually getting that into your sinuses, into your respiratory system, and when it gets into your sinuses, it's going to use that antimicrobial, those antiviral features to clear your tubes of your ears, dry up your sinuses, allow you to breathe more deeply. And the one feature that really stands out is they consider halo therapy to be the toothbrush of the lungs. So on an athletic standpoint and on a vitality perspective, this is very therapeutic to give yourself that extra lung capacity, clear those tubes, clear your system. Especially out here where we live in the valley, we have so many allergens in the air. We live in an agricultural community, and now we're dealing with environmental issues with wildfires every year. So we need this more than ever. Clear the system, right? And it's maintenance as well, right? And we're not saying you have to come in and do this every day, but it's a good idea to add it to your regimen, right? So again, we do offer memberships that give people a bit of all of that, depending on their needs and what they're looking for. But the halo therapy, immensely beneficial to everybody. I wish more people would use it. Yeah.
Well, two things regarding halo therapy. I know in Surrey there's a halo therapy place, and they are dedicated to just halo therapy,
Okay.
not all the other services. And she was just during COVID, dealing with people who have had post-COVID symptoms.
Yeah.
She was running a study to see if they were given handheld halo device therapy,
Okay.
halo therapy device to use at home, and a contraption to measure your lung capacity,
Okay.
and what impact it had over time on your lung capacity, because they were trying to make that into a sort of a mainstream medical treatment rather than just relying on medication. I may be able to connect you to her, and you might be able to discuss with her how to make halo therapy more well known and utilized.
Yeah.
I really don't think enough people know about it. They like the
They
pretty
definitely
salt
don't.
lamps, but there's so much benefit to it. Second thing I wanted to mention, I visited a salt mine in Pakistan.
Oh,
It was really, it was an amazing experience. I also saw a goat there that stole a kid's ice cream. That was so funny. But we went on a tour. There was a tour guide, and it was just the most beautiful thing. And that was the first time that now I realize, hey, I kind of saw a float therapy thing there. But he was he was pointing at a pond, and he was talking about how because it's in the mine.
Yes.
The salt density is so high that if you were to jump into that water, because of that water density, you wouldn't float. And you wouldn't sink. You would float. And then we walked past that, and I was like, oh, I wish someone would jump into it so I could see it.
Yeah.
I had never experienced float therapy at that time.
Okay.
Now I'm like, oh my gosh, how have I gone my whole life without this thing?
Yeah.
And then there was a whole section to the salt mine that was closed off to the public.
Okay.
They turned that into a hospital made out of salt.
Wow.
For people who have COPD, asthma, and other respiratory conditions. People go in there, they get admitted for a certain period of time, they come out, and it's significantly improved or completely gone sometimes.
Yeah.
So that was really fascinating.
Yeah, I have a good story of a customer of ours who utilized our halo chamber for medical benefit. And that's so cool that you've been to Pakistan and actually been in the caves. I did have a client of mine mention that he had been in Turkey, and they had a similar experience where they actually take you about 4 miles into a mountain, and you end up in this beautiful salt cave. And you can go down there for a couple hours, and they'd have tours, and you can bring back, obviously memorabilia and things like that. But very, very cool. I would love to visit something like that. But yes, we have a customer of ours who was diagnosed with a really bad form of pneumonia in the lungs. And for the life of her, she could not get rid of it. Her doctor had her on every medication on demand, prednisones, and we know how deteriorating some of these medications are. Which I still find absolutely hilarious when you're sitting down watching TV and the pharmaceutical companies are pumping these medications down your throat, and they're saying, well, hey, this could help you live a regular life, but hey, you might bleed from the eyes, you might, it might cause heart attack. It's like, oh, that sounds amazing, I'll take that risk. I mean, who wants to do that? So I think, again, the halo therapy, Eastern medicine-wise, it was discovered so much earlier. They've been using it. The fact that they built a hospital out of it and they're curing people of these issues is so amazing. But my customer went through all of it, all the medical options, and still was not getting better. She finally saw a doctor that said, well, hey, let's start looking at other things. And they discovered salt therapy. And just so happened that our center had a booth. So next thing you know, she comes in, let's give this a try. And I want to say, within 6 sessions of, 30-minute sessions of sitting in the booth, she started to notice very positive effects. And she continued doing this for, want to say about 6 months. She was coming regularly, 2-3 times a week. When she went to her doctor to do a follow-up scan, he was amazed. He said, "Oh my God, what have you been doing?" And when she described to him, I've been, doing salt inhalation, salt therapy, he just said, "Well, your scan looks great. Like, your lungs are clear." So it goes to show you, all these medications, all these other things that people have tried, the doctors are prescribe. They're just not always the right solution. And I'm not saying this is for everybody. I want to think, we all, our DNA makeups are all different. It kind of shows you why some people are affected by long COVID and some others aren't. It's just in our genetics. So certain things in the Western medicine world, they may not work for everybody. The same thing with Eastern medicines and the wellness spaces, where somebody might say, halo chamber, breathing salt, that's not for me, right? But the scientific research is there, and it does work. I don't know if you have friends that live near the beach, live near the ocean. They don't have allergies. And it's not because they don't have trees or grass, but the air is just clear from the salt water. They tend to suffer from less respiratory issues. They don't suffer from seasonal allergies. They tend to fight off colds and flus much more efficiently than, say, somebody who lives in the valley.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was thinking about the beach thing too, and there is a place for modern medicine for sure.
Oh, definitely.
And I love that you mentioned that it's not a one size fits all. No. I had a former colleague, who tried float therapy, and it just wasn't for her. She said her whole body was just on fire, and she had some sort of a reaction. I'm not sure if she had maybe a mild allergy to Epsom salt that she wasn't aware of.
It's always possible.
Right? But again, or for different reasons, the way what I've learned is I'll go to the doctors if I have a very specific concern that needs to be addressed, and quite immediately. But if I'm trying to improve my overall health, that's what I see my naturopath for. Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's what I come to LunaFloat for.
Yes.
Right? To take control of my overall health and well-being, and, but more chronic illnesses. Yeah, I mean, if I'm sick and I'm just coughing a lot and I just really, really, really need something, like as an example, right? I might go take cough medicine or something like that, or I'm taking Tylenol to bring the fever down really quickly. Okay, that's one thing. But in the long run, for example, I had an issue. I like how you mentioned the example of eyes bleeding, because I once had a really, really bad acne issue, but I was also dealing with lack of appetite, and I couldn't keep food down, and I would just throw up anything I would eat or drink. And I was honestly starting to get quite sick, and I went to 5 different doctors, and they're like, here, take Gravel, and here, take this, and here, there's an acne medication. And I kept saying, I think there's an underlying thing going on, but they just kept putting me on medication, and I think the doctor gave me this tube for acne, and he said, if this one doesn't work, we'll go to the next one, which is the strongest one we have in pharmaceuticals. It will fail your liver, but it will definitely get rid of your acne.
I'm familiar
and he said that so casually, and I just walked out. I was like, no, thank you. And turns out I had a gluten intolerance.
Okay.
Right? And not a single doctor. In fact, I even had a doctor tell me there's no such thing as an allergy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Again, not all doctors obviously share that, but everyone has to do what works for them. But I think there's a purpose for modern medicine, and there's a purpose for a holistic medicine and treatments, right? So if you don't mind, I want to switch gears to talk a little bit about you.
Sure.
I think we completely hopped over that at the beginning as we dived into flow therapy, but please tell us a little bit about who you are. Who is Corey? How do your friends and family describe you?
Yeah, well, that's always an awkward one to talk about yourself. But, very simply, I came from a very normal middle-class family. I grew up in California in the San Francisco Bay Area. Lived there for 22 years until I met my now wife of almost 20 years, coming up in June. But no, just very average. I think subliminally, growing up, my dad started his own businesses when I was a kid. And I think, as I got into my, teenage years, getting jobs, working, and then eventually into my 20s, I think something inside me just kind of knew that, possibly being, working for myself would be something in my future. I wouldn't say that it was always there, but I think maybe there's got to be an underlying, influence. But no, I grew up a very normal life, living in the States, very standard, textbook type childhood, no privilege whatsoever. My parents were very middle class. My dad started his own business. Like I said, when I was a child, my mom worked in the dental industry. She was at first just assisting, working in the front office. In her 40s, she decided to go back to school and become a dental hygienist. So she, I got to hand it to her, it was very inspiring, for a 40-something-year-old woman to say, you know what, I've been in this industry for long enough, it's time for me to reap the benefits. And she went back and educated herself and, became a licensed dental hygienist. And it was very good for them. It was very nice to see, not just, my dad stepping up and owning and operating his own businesses, but to see my mom say, you know what, no, I'm going to better my situation too. I'm going to go back and educate myself. And that was really, really cool to see. But for myself, I got married young. My wife and I, we married at 24 years old. And I remember people saying to me, oh, already? Yeah, but, it's right, it's right. And, we're going on 20 years of marriage. 2 boys, 11 and 16. So life is good, We've lived here in Chilliwack for almost 12 years now, and it's a great community, great place to live. I would say, my working career, I used to, when I first came to Canada, when I was 22, I was a CNC machinist, working in the sharpening industry. That was my dad's trade. That was what he had his business in. So when I came to Canada, I was able to find a work visa working for a company out of Vancouver. So I was able to facilitate my wife and I's, kind of relationship stepping up to the next level. I was able to move here and get a job and kind of start building a life. So leaving all my friends behind, leaving family behind, and trying to pursue life. So that was my career at first, and then I think I just reached a wall in that industry one day. It was kind of coming to a halt, and I just said to myself, this is not what I want to be doing. These are not the type of people I want to be surrounding myself with. It's time to make a change. And, at the time, as a 20-year-old, still kind of lost, no real direction in, what did I want for a career? What did I want for, where do I see myself in my 40s and 50s? I didn't really have that in my 20s. I don't think a lot of us do. I look at my kids and I'm thinking, God, my oldest is 16, and what life direction do I see him going in? He has no idea. He has interests, he has things he's good at, but is he thinking career focused yet? And I just don't see that yet. So I know what it's like. So making an industry change in my 20s, I found a job working for Apple Auto Glass. I wanted something in the automotive industry. I've always loved cars. I've always loved working with my hands and tools. So I pursued a job working for an auto glass. And, I think I took everybody by surprise because I was very adaptable. I was able to step into a job, learn it very quickly, and not just learn it, but excel at it. Within 3 years, I was not just working as a technician, I was becoming licensed and then running my own service center. So there was lots of opportunity in that industry, and there was a point in my life in the industry where I saw these corporate, regional managers, these vice presidents, and they always showed up in their nice suits and they looked so composed and they always knew what was going on in the business. And I always kind of envied that about them, and I always thought, maybe the corporate life is the way to go. Start at the bottom, work your way to the top. A few things happened through the years in that industry that made me sour on the corporate life. There was times where I was fully bought in. I thought, hey, I'm going to be a corporate guy. I'll put on the golf shirt and I'll go to the meetings and we'll sit down with the binders and we'll manage all the employees. And there was a time where I saw myself in that role. And then, it was really, I had a business partner when I started my own auto glass business. So back in 2016, when I finally decided, this, again, kind of souring on the corporate world, not really seeing elevation above my ceiling in my current position. And we went out and started our own business, and I had a business partner. And what I'm saying is that I almost credit him in a lot of ways for pushing me a little bit, because I was very comfortable in that paycheck, in that security that jobs can provide us. You would understand as well as anybody, when you start doing things for yourself, it's a bit of a risk, right? You're not always going for that steady, week to week, month to month paycheck. So I started discovering things about myself that I never even knew, and this was into my 30s now. I'm discovering myself still in my 30s, thinking, wow, okay, I know what I'm good at. I know I'm smart enough to learn things at a good pace. So yeah, I do credit my old business partner for, kind of giving me that extra push to get away from that corporate world. And we left and we started our own business. It was a little short-lived with the partnership. As we know, partnerships don't always work out. And, we were a bit divided and we had some different ideals. There were some things, that I saw in him that didn't really resonate with me moving forward. So I ended up, saying, hey, look, we're going to have to make some choices here. And if you'd like to keep the business, I will gladly sell you my half. And if you want out, I will gladly buy your half. So anyways, we came to an agreement and I kept the business. I think that's when I really grew as a person. We had an auto glass business right here in Chilliwack called Cottonwood Auto Glass. I built it from the ground up. So essentially took my contacts that I had here in town and my know-how and just kind of evolved it. It's not something, you can read all the books in the world on how to run and operate a business, but it's hands-on experience that really gets you there. A lot of things I still am learning, and I've always kind of kept that motto, never stop learning, because there's nothing that bothers me more than arrogance, where somebody believes that there's only one right way and they know it, because at the end of the day, we're never going to know everything. Look at inspirational people like Warren Buffett. Sure, he's a multi-billionaire, but the guy still has a lot to learn, and he's still so humble. It's inspiring to see people like that. So, yes, starting my own business, running my own business, it was a very good growth time of my life. And I think that's when I really decided, wow, I've finally found something that I really, really enjoy. And, the auto glass business as a licensed technician was great. The industry, it pays very, very well, but what I really, really enjoyed was the operating of the business, all the aspects of it. Employees can be a little bit difficult. As any business owner will tell you, that is definitely one of the most difficult aspects of being a business owner. But I think that's where I really found my calling, something I really enjoyed, which is the operational aspect of being a business owner and doing that. So yes, I think that's when I really probably only became an adult maybe 5 years ago. But I think it brings on a whole new level of responsibilities.
Oh my gosh, I love that. There is so much in there I want to unpack. I don't know where to start.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Okay, so let's talk about, when you said you don't like arrogance and there were some things that weren't aligning between you and your partner, it seems like you touched a little bit on your core values there. What would you say are some of your most important values?
Well, it's tough to dissect myself that way, but I'd like to think that I'm honest. I don't want to present myself in a way that's untruthful, and I like being upfront with people. I think people deserve it, and honesty is definitely a quality that I admire in somebody. I think, as we grow older and our circles shrink and we start to realize, we surround ourselves with the people that lift us up and not put us down. It all comes back to, your personal values, and we start to see that in other people and what, how we want to live our lives and the influences that we want coming into our lives. So honesty is definitely something I pride myself in, but, I'm also a half glass full person. I always see the bright side in things. I credit my parents for that. Anytime I've presented them with any, sort of life-changing event, it's never, oh my God, are you sure about this? It's always, wow, good for you. So I always consider myself a glass half full. I think if you talk to people who know me personally, I'm generally a very happy, smiley person. I try not to get down on myself. I'm not saying I'm not human and I don't have down days, because I very much do. But for the most part, I try to stay positive. And I think in, being a business owner, you have to. Mm-hmm. I think it's one of the most important aspects of being a business owner is, how can you be moving things forward if you're constantly worrying about taking a step backwards? So fear, it can be very detrimental. So I try to stay very positive. I try to be an honest person. I try to be a positive role model for my kids. In many ways, which even goes to my most recent venture, which is stopped, consuming alcohol on a regular basis, trying to get that under control just for my own personal health and for the aspect of my kids, so that they don't see that on a day-to-day basis. So trying to be a good role model is very important to me.
Thank you. And then let's speak about how you translate those into your staffing strategies. What is your strategy on, what do you look for in recruiting people or people you're recruiting, and what kind of things do you model for your employees?
Yeah.
Would love it if you touched a little bit on your experience for transitioning from one business to another, and how was it like for you to leave that business and the staff you've worked with and jump into another business where there already were staff that you now had to build rapport with? So,
as a business owner, staffing is always the most difficult aspect. Finding qualified, competent people that want to work, it's always tough. But when it comes to my old business, very different from the current business. The old one, we were looking for very niche employees, people that had a trade certificate in a very niche trade. It's not something that's taught to the public. It's not something that is very mass, put out there by the media. Hey, become an auto glass technician. I don't think anybody in growing up ever heard, hey, I could become an auto glass technician. It's just not on your radar. So as an employer, actually I should go back and say, as an employee, I look at the values of managers I've had over the years. and I take the good and the bad. And this is, again, something where I feel like once I became a business owner was a huge growth point for me, because it gave me time to look back and say, okay, well, you know, the boss I had, you know, at this time of the years, these were the things I really enjoyed working with him on. These were the aspects of him I really didn't enjoy. You know, and I've been able to kind of cater my approach to being a boss and modeling these employees after the values that I find, you know, to be beneficial to the work environment. You know, taking all the good aspects, leaving all the bad behind, and then kind of growing my own approach. So, you know, with the auto glass business, I had to look for licensed technicians, or I had to train them to become licensed technicians. So there was a lot of growing pains where you're putting guys onto a, you know, you bring your vehicle in for service. You're now trusting that business, and now I have to then entrust my employees to make sure that you're being looked after, as well as my responsibility of overlooking them and making sure that things are done right. So there's layers to that. But I always try to be, with both businesses, family first. You know, I always give employees try to give them the comfort of knowing that don't stress out when family things arise, because they are inevitable. We all go through it. Life is a journey, and we all have to deal with raising young children. Illnesses happen, accidents happen. So being flexible and letting people know that, hey, when your family is involved, don't stress out about work. You know, yes, sure, it can be frustrating as an employer, but we deal with things. And I've always had an open approach with my employees that, hey, make sure you deal with that first. We will cover everything off and make sure you're looked after. I try to be friendly with everybody. I don't believe in being a hardline boss. I never liked the approach of, you know, making sure, you know, if someone's 2 minutes late to work, you know, giving them a big up and down ream. It's like, hey, you know, there's traffic this morning, you know, try to get here earlier, obviously, but hey, just don't sweat it. Like, I'm not gonna berate my employees. You know, when it comes to the business environment, we spend half our lives there with these people, you know, with our employees. You have to have a friendship. It makes the workday more enjoyable. I never wanted to be the boss that just sits up in the office staring down on the employees and having this division. I don't mind getting in there and working with them, showing them that we are a team, we are a part of this together. I think that breeds a good culture in the workplace. So that brings me into our new business, you know, where yes, we purchased it with 4 existing employees. So, you know, initially, my approach coming into it is, you know, let's make friends, right? I want to know all you. Like, I need to figure you all out. I need to know what you're about. I need to learn your work habits. So when we purchased the business, we let everybody know that there's no changes. You know, we're going to come in, we're going to simply take over, we're going to revamp everything into our image, and you can help us on that journey or find employment elsewhere, unfortunately. So in this instance, I had all 4 of my employees came over with us. Within the first month, 1 left on her own accord. So we were down to 3. We had made a lot of adjustments to the business structure, and that involved changing the business operating hours, which affects our employees since they're all on shift work. That was another new aspect for me, was managing employees on shift schedules, which is not something I had done in the past. Before, it was 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, show up, go home. You know, don't work weekends. It was very clean cut, very straightforward. So now we're managing employees on shift schedules, which is very different. Completely different beast in the world of employment, for sure. So, you know, we proposed to another employee, hey, look, you know, we don't want to let you go, but we are making changes and we can offer these times to you. And it was unfortunate because she was a very nice girl, had been with the business for quite some time, but unfortunately she had made the choice that, you know, she would rather move on than change days and hours. So then we were down to 2 employees, which as a owner, I also like to be in the operations. Like I said, I have no problem getting my hands in there and being a part of it. Definitely not an absentee owner. I'm not just an operator, but I want to be able to do the job and understand the job thoroughly. Any business I want to be a part of, I want to make sure that I understand the ins and outs of it, just for my own, purpose of operations, just so I think when you're dealing with the public, it goes a long way when you can stand there, look somebody in the eye and speak intelligently about what you're offering the public. So having employees is also something you have to look them in the eye and say, honestly, this is what I need. So we then had 2 employees that were with us after one left, and so we then found, it kind of all weeded itself out in the best way. The 2 of our, most solid staff members stayed on, and then being, the luck of being a business owner, I just, recently lost a 3rd employee. Just 2 days ago. So it's just all part of the journey. So then again is, brings on new challenges, whereas now we have to pivot a little bit. So it's all part of the journey. It's all part of it. But, I try to make sure that everyone's looked after. I try to make sure that people are happy. I'm constantly revisiting changes with staff, making sure that everything's working, not just for us, but for them. And it's, again, kind of goes back to my learning experience from having bosses and my own approach where, I try to take the good and eliminate the bad and then use that in my approach.
Wow, thank you for that. I appreciate that. There was so much there to learn from. Recruitment is just a never-ending process.
Oh.
And
I didn't touch on recruitment, but
well, now you have to recruit more people.
Yes, yeah. Well,
would you like to touch on?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. When it comes to the hiring process, that's even more difficult. Mm-hmm. And I've got to tell you, between both of my businesses, I would say my success rate in hiring is not great. And I don't know if that's really, my approach to what I'm looking for, or if that's just the workforce in general. Because, I think that it could be something where I should maybe reach out to continue my learning process. Maybe find somebody who has a good success rate in recruitment, maybe learn a little bit more about trying to pinpoint those right values in people. Maybe I need to make a bit of a change in how I hire. But essentially, what I've seen is, and this goes back to, of all things, it reminds me of a Chris Rock stand-up show. Have you ever watched Chris Rock? Bigger and Blacker came out in the early 2000s. Hilarious stand-up show where he likens meeting somebody for the first time, where he says, I'm not really meeting you, I'm meeting your representative.
Oh.
Because you get to know people, the real true person underneath what they show you. If you're in the world of dating and you go out on a first date, people tend to bring the best of themselves, right? And I think that's the same with employment. You see people try to put the best foot forward to show you, hey, I can do this, and this is who I want to be hired, so hire me. So they're going to bring out the best. And for some people, it's truthful, but for a lot of people, it's not. I can say with a good amount of confidence that I have a large percentage of employees that I've hired who came to me with great aspirations. I want a career. I'm going to work hard for you. This is the type of industry I want to be in. And I always maintain with everybody, if you work hard for me, I will also work hard for you. I value my people. And I want to make sure that everyone's looked after, but they have to also put in the effort to get the effort in return. So I've got to say with a good deal of confidence that most people have been very disappointing, unfortunately. Several people just come in with great intention and then just drop off very, very quickly once they realize that, wow, work is hard, and I don't know if this is a generational disconnect because, you look at my grandparents who worked into their 70s, grinding their hands, building houses, to a generation now that needs their parents to do interviews for them. right? I'm not saying this is everybody, but again, talking within friends in the business communities, I got to say that there's a lot of evidence supporting that, we need employees to really understand that, all good things come with hard work. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes time to develop a comfort level somewhere. It doesn't always just come naturally to everybody. So yeah, success rate on hiring, I'm not so great at it, but I value my people. And I want to make sure that everyone's looked after, but they have to also put in the effort to get the effort in return. So I've got to say with a good deal of confidence that most people have been very disappointing, unfortunately. Several people just come in with great intention and then just drop off very, very quickly once they realize that, wow, work is hard, and I don't know if this is a generational disconnect because, you look at my grandparents who worked into their 70s, grinding their hands, building houses, to a generation now that needs their parents to do interviews for them, right? I'm not saying this is everybody, but again, talking within friends in the business communities, I got to say that there's a lot of evidence supporting that, we need employees to really understand that, all good things come with hard work. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes time to develop a comfort level somewhere. It doesn't always just come naturally to everybody. So yeah, success rate on hiring, I'm not so great at it, but in my current recruitments, I do have one employee that I've hired recently who's been great. We had a very good hire, and she works part-time for us, and soon to come back, hopefully more of a full-time position here, I would hope. But so it's not all bad, but there has been some good success stories. With my previous business, my first two hires, I would have to say my second two hires, were with me for several years until they both just went through their own life changes and life took them in different directions. So those were great hires, but following that, I had a couple mishits, but for the most part, I'm probably batting 50-50.
I don't think you're alone in that. So in my business, I don't do a lot of recruiting. I'm a solopreneur. I don't have employees, but here and there, I have hired people for specific tasks, such as subcontractors, right? Whether it be virtual assistant or someone to manage my social media or edit my videos or things like that. And it's been quite hit or miss as well, right? Yeah. Sometimes you'll find someone who is very, dedicated and they deliver, but I feel like you kind of have to find that hidden gem. And I try to be very, understanding, compassionate. Yeah. A lot of similar things you mentioned, like work hard for me, I'll work hard with you. Yeah. We're a team, we're building something together. Yeah. But I've had, I'll give you an example. I had this virtual assistant. She was fabulous at what she did. She was so amazing. She was on top of everything. Any emails I sent her, quick responses, any events I put together, she's on there getting people registered. Yeah. She'd even MC some events. She was amazing at actually supporting the business. Unfortunately, we had to part ways because I started getting phone calls from people attending my events as quite upset actually. Oh, wow. Because after the event she was phoning the contacts from those events and trying to sell them her multi-level marketing business. And I remember having that conversation with her early on. I said, you do what you want on your personal time. Yeah. It is none of my business, but my specific business does not associate with multi-level marketing businesses. Yeah. Please do not bring that into here. In doing leadership development, I also sometimes work with, and also in my background working in nonprofit sector or corrections, I have worked with very vulnerable, marginalized individuals. Yeah. So sometimes people who are attending leadership development workshops, right? Sometimes people will be vulnerable, and well, a lot of the times, a big part of leadership development is vulnerability. And so for this individual to use that vulnerability to then call them and then try and sell them other products, highly unethical. And I think she could, I'm not one to raise my voice, but I think she could hear in my tone all over the phone how upset I was that she stepped down herself. She's like, I don't think this is going to be a good fit. I think this might be the end of the way for us. I'm like, yeah, I think so too.
There's a silver lining to some of that as well. Obviously for you in that instance, a huge conflict of interest, and you cannot have that in your business at all. Non-competition agreements exist now within employers in many industries, and actually there's a huge debate going on in the public right now about NDAs and how ethical they are in certain industries as well, which is something to keep track of on the current news. But I think this, like I said, the silver lining with these employees and the issues that we have as small business owners, what I think, and this is just my own perception of it, is what's happening now with the newer generations, the Gen Zs, and this is a good thing as well as maybe a negative for, say, older business owners like myself, is I think younger generations are starting to really see the value in solopreneurial adventures and being self-employed. I think everybody, now especially with social media, Instagram, giving people avenues to have their own businesses that they don't depend on anybody else for, is becoming more and more popular. We're seeing a shift from, people saying, well, I'm going to go out of college to go get a job. And people are saying, well, no, I'm going to get out of college to become, my own business, to become an entrepreneur, to start something for myself. And I just think that could possibly be part of what's causing some of these hardships with business owners like ourselves, where we're looking for staff that want to come in, and we're telling them, we're looking for workers. We need someone to do the work. And they have aspirations of working for themselves, so it doesn't always, compute very well from trying to be an employee when you're really looking to be an employer. Maybe I'm alone in this, but I feel that, I see that in this younger generation where they want fast money. And one thing I've learned from my own journey, and from reading books to studying and following, influential people that I admire, is the one thing that stands true, no matter who you look at, in the world of business, is that you have got to work your butt off, right? And no one's going to hand it to you, unless you're coming from a family of wealth, which I would like to build for my own generations in the future, to allow them to have a little bit of an easier time for it. That's, I guess, the goal for everybody, is to build that generational wealth, so that families down the line don't have to work or struggle as much as in this world of inflation where everything's just getting more expensive. Try to make things easier for the next generations. But I just think that I see a lot of that in the current workforce. They just want to work for themselves, but they don't realize, you're going to have to put in the time first. I don't know how many, look at, I believe, guys like Jeff Bezos, he didn't found Amazon until he was in his 40s. He worked at McDonald's, I'm pretty sure. A lot of, I'm not sure of him specifically, but a lot of these really famous, entrepreneurs, they were flipping burgers, they were sweeping floors. But a lot of the younger generation, they just say, oh, well, I want to make money now. And we're offering them an opportunity to have a job and make money. It's going to take time. And I think that's something that maybe the younger generations need to maybe have a little more patience and get into it before they, decide that, hey, I'm already an entrepreneur. Well, maybe you need to work some years first.
No, it's so true. I don't think you're alone in feeling that. I think part of it is inflation. Part of it is COVID, where people have been just at home for so long, and the whole stay at home in schools and just everything being up in the air, things changing so fast. There's people's values have shifted now as well, and what's important to them. So as employers, we also have to kind of look at, okay, what do people actually value now and how can you provide that? There is another component of it where I do feel like there is some work ethic that has been lost. I feel like I personally really feel uncomfortable kind of targeting one generation, but I do feel that the upcoming generation who is their formative years that have been through COVID are going to be deeply impacted. It also doesn't help all those social media gurus that create such an environment about wanting quick money.
They push a very quick fix.
Very, it's this mentality of, I'm not wrong, my program's not wrong, if it's not working with you, you're not committed enough.
Yes.
Very dangerous, very dangerous. I've heard of stories of, people just going from working professional, having a house, having family, to literally losing everything because they took out loans to buy into these programs that do nothing but someone showing up and talking about mindset. And I don't have statistics on me, but everyone wants to be a TikToker, YouTuber, but the success rates for it, where you can actually truly make full-time income from it, the percentage is quite small. And then on the flip side, I just, when I deal with people of, not all of course, but I've had to deal with a lot of older generations where they are just refusing to learn to use technology. And it's in their job description of their job, and they've gotten by putting anything to do with technology onto the younger generation. So
that was a generational, but it's not to say it's any one generation.
Yes. But the whole work ethic, I feel like COVID has had some impact on it. I have recently lost some friendships with friends or former friends who I found their response to everything was, every time I want to talk to them about something I was dealing with as a friend, their response would become, oh, I wish I had your problems. Well, if you want my problems, you need to make my decisions, right? You made the decision you made that led to your problems. I made the decisions I made that led to my problems. So I've actually lost some pretty close friendships because of that reason. I have worked 10, 12, 16 years on the skills that I've developed to bring me where I am. I started at the age of 16. And I'm 32 now. But I have over a decade of experience in doing what I'm doing because of how young I was when I got involved. When kids were wanting to date and party and drink, my mentality was, I want to go on conferences, I want to learn about leadership, I want to speak to people. That was my jam, even as a teenager. I worked at nonprofits, I facilitated programs, I took programs and trainings as well. And, all through high school, university, wasn't interested in dating, wasn't interested in drinking, wasn't interested in smoking, wasn't interested in doing drugs, just wasn't. And part of it, maybe I can credit to my parents and my family and my culture and religion, all of that stuff. But I just I wasn't into that, and I've always been very ambitious and career oriented. Right? But it took work to get there. Right? I couldn't just, not having done anything that I did in my past, and to just wake up one day and decide, I'm gonna go start teaching leadership stuff.
Well, it's people need to value their choices. Right? Because it's your choices in life that shape your future. So every choice we make, it can either open a door or close a door. Right? So we have to be very conscious of the choices we make. But yes, like you said, we don't want to pigeonhole generations in specific ways because there's always exceptions. Right? It really just comes down to the individual, their upbringing, their backgrounds, and that could be so broad. And yeah, like you made a good point about, COVID very much shifting future generations and the way things happen. Losing friendships. I've heard so many stories about, actually a friend of mine recently popped in to see my new business, and we started talking, and he mentioned how, he had a friend through COVID that just got absolutely drawn into the conspiracy side of things and got to the point where he wouldn't even leave his house. So he ended up driving 4 hours to just show up at his door, unannounced, and just say, "Hey, pack your bag, you're leaving." Just to try to help him get back to who he was.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way, and we have to be so careful with the way we use social media and the way our future generations are viewing social media, because there's so much, and I absolutely hate to credit Donald Trump for bringing the fake media to everyone's forefront, but there is a lot of it, right? With AI now and a lot of narrative pushing from media sites, as horrible of a human being as he is, in my opinion, not everybody's, he did bring that to the forefront, of the media. And now I think it's just created a world of distrust, but it's also been a bit of an eye-opener, just not to take everything you read at face value. And again, I've always kind of, like you said, it's hard. You may lose friends over these topics nowadays. I have a friend that constantly brings up politics every time we talk, and I'm kind of like, okay, like, I understand your stance, but do we have to talk about this?
Yeah.
Because it's not going to do us any good. We are not aligned in this battle, and I try to veer the conversation away. But there's certain things in today's society now where, I have family that I absolutely will not speak to because they have enveloped themselves in conspiracies, in propaganda pushing, and I don't want to be part of it. There's a good quote that says, ignorance is a choice. In the age of connectivity, ignorance is a choice. So if you choose to simply read something and pass it along without investigating it, that's your choice. But the reality is that we shouldn't be taking things at face value. We really should be forming our own opinions, by doing research from reputable sources. I watch CNN occasionally, and I still don't take everything I hear on that channel to heart. You can flip to Fox News, you can flip to CBC, and at the end of the day, we need to be able to take all of the information and form our own consensus of what is right and wrong, or true and not. And I just have a feeling that because of COVID, and religion is another one you just try not to talk too much about, political views, but I find that people just need to do more research before they have a hardline opinion on something.
I agree, and a whole other rabbit hole to dive into.
Very
But
much.
I want to
Very
be
much.
respectful of your time, so I want to conclude this podcast interview by asking you, what is one of the best advice that you received, and what is that you would actually like to pass on to the audience?
Wow, that's a tough one, because I gotta say, I don't know if I have anything specific, other than just the fact that through my own experiences, my own journey is that don't expect anything to come quickly. If you're on a journey and you have a goal, just stay focused on that goal, because if you put in the hard work, another good quote that I always loved is that hard work puts you where luck can find you, right? And I think it was Thomas Jefferson that made a quote similar to that back in his day, where hard work puts you where good luck can find you. And I think it's shown that throughout the years and generations that people that don't quit on their dreams, people that don't quit on their journey, that continue to put in the time, it will pay off. You know, if you're truthful and honest with people and you have a goal in mind, that it will pay off. And I've tried to keep that in mind in my day-to-day experiences and my new business adventure and my 5-year to 10-year plan, that as long as I keep working hard towards those goals, that I will make it happen for myself. And the one lesson I have learned that is beneficial to everybody is, you know, really lean on yourself. Because we don't all have that crutch, you know, sitting behind us that we can always lean on. We need to be able to have confidence in ourselves, you know, confidence that we can achieve, you know, the things that may seem unattainable. You know, another good reference that I've always tried to, you know, keep in mind when I'm thinking about, you know, can I make it to that level of my own success? You know, can I achieve this? Is, you know, don't put things on a pedestal, you know, because the things that seem unattainable are very much attainable if you put in the work, right? You have to put in the time, you have to put yourself out there. And again, I think too, it's getting out of your comfort zone. You know, sitting down and doing interviews, maybe 5 years ago would have been extremely uncomfortable, you know, but as you evolve and you get out into the community, things come easier. So yes, get yourself out there, do the uncomfortable, because those moments when you grow are not the moments when things are easy. There are always those moments when things are the hardest. I mean, that's where growth happens, in the hard times.
That's amazing. Thank you. So if anyone wants to reach you or find Luna Float, how do they find you or reach you?
Yeah, so they can check out our website at lunafloat.ca. We are all over social media, Instagram, Facebook, and our new TikTok page. Have to appeal to all the generations, so you know, we're doing our best to get the word out. So yeah, check us out on our social media feeds. Look at our website. There's tons of great information. Best thing to always do, as I say, just pop into the store. Come and talk to us. We're always there. We're available. We'd love to give tours. We'd love to give people information, how our services can benefit everybody. It's a constantly evolving industry. We're always looking for new ways to innovate, and talking to people is always the best way to find those inspirations.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time and for coming here.
And thank you so much for having me.
If you learned something new to help you grow to the next level or experienced an aha moment, share this episode with someone who really needs to hear it too. And if you enjoyed listening to this podcast as much as I enjoyed delivering it, please take a moment to subscribe, comment, leave a review to help this podcast grow. Thank you. See you on the next episode and have an empowering day.